Hello, and thank you for joining me for my quick tutorial project on how to make a brooch. This is what I'm going to make. So it's quite a statement brooch there, made with fabrics and an ammonite mould in the middle. So stay tuned and I'll show you exactly how I've made that. Here's what we're going to need. You're going to need your brooch back. So what I've got here is just an MDF circle, and I've glued my brooch pin onto the back of it there. Then I've got some t-shirt, just a rough cut piece of t-shirt material there. Another little piece of dishcloth there for a bit more texture and interest. And then I've got a little ammonite. Now I've just moulded that myself using air-dried clay in a mould. That'll work perfectly. You're also then going to need a brush, a flat brush ideally. You need your fabric hardener, whichever one you're working with. A pair of gloves, because we are going to get our hands properly stuck into it. Plate just to pour it out onto to work in. And then when we come to do our colouring, I'm going to use a nice bronze coloured mica powder along with a varnish. And the varnish I'm just going to mix the mica into to give me my paint. And I'm going to do that on, if you can just see that, just on a paper palette. Okay, so I've just put my gloves on and I'm just going to pour out a little bit of my fabric hardener onto the plate. It's a nice brown colour. It's going to work beautifully with that bronze gold. You only need quite a small amount for this. It is only a little project. We can always just top that up and add a little bit more if we need to. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take a little bit on my finger and just wipe it over the surface of my base. Okay, it's going to give it a really good surface to stick onto. Okay, just pop that back there. Then I'm going to start with my piece of t-shirt. I'm going to just dunk that in, scrunch some up in it and work it through with my fingers. So I want to get that completely covered, so it's completely brown, no white bits showing through. And that should end up really nice and tacky. Okay, so I'm just easing it apart just to check on both sides. There's no white bits there. Okay, so once that's covered, I'm just going to lay that gently over the base. Then I'm going to take my piece of dishcloth, do exactly the same. Get it coated with my fabric hardener. This is going to just make a nice bit of quite interesting texture around the edge of my ammonite. Once I've got that completely covered, going to also lay that over my base on top of the t-shirt, like so. Then I'm going to add my ammonite, a little bit on the back there, just on the sides, just to help that stick. That just act like a glue. Just pop that in the middle where I want it to go. Then I'm going to take my brush and just paint over the top surface. So what I'm going to start with when I add my gold colour is something that is completely brown. And I'll just pop my brush in some water. Then what I'm going to do is literally just lift the edges of my fabric and scrunch them around the outside of my central ammonite piece there. So just working my way around, lifting the fabric up and arranging it around the sides. Okay. So once we're happy with how our brooch looks, all we need to do now is just let that dry. So you can either just leave it and it'll be dry around about an hour or so and you'll be ready to add the colour on then, or you can speed it up just with a hairdryer and it'll literally take just a couple of minutes to get that dry with a hairdryer. Okay, so I've given that a good dry with a hairdryer there. Hopefully you can see all the lovely detail there from the mould and also the texture from the dishcloth and the t-shirt as well. So I'm ready to add my colour. As I said, I'm going to use the bronze gold. Nice mica powder there, so you see that shimmering inside there. I've got my varnish. This is my paper palette that I'm just going to mix on. And my brush. I'm just using the same brush as I did before. I've just given it a good rinse with water and a really good squeeze to get the water, as much water out as I can. So I'm going to squeeze just a little bit of that varnish onto my paper. Then I'm just going to, about the size of a 5-piece, plenty. You're not going to need a lot for this project at all. So I'm going to just coat the end of my brush with it so it's nice and sticky. Dip it gently into the powder and then mix back to give me that beautiful gold paint. Now I'm going to go on to this with my brush kind of parallel to the surface, so I'm dragging it across the tops. And there you'll see, look at it just picking out all that beautiful texture I've got on there. So I'm going to run it across all of it, across the centre as well. I've got that beautiful gold ammonite in the middle. Okay, so there's my finished ammonite brooch. Obviously you can do this with other embellishments in the centre. So I've got a couple here with a shell, just with a little daisy, just whatever you can find to put in the middle. As I said, air dry clay works beautifully in moulds. You can also use metal shapes, wooden embellishments, maybe bits of old jewellery you've got laying around, anything just to make a really nice statement brooch that others will really admire. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed just that short project there and that you'll join me again for some of my others.